Today I'm gonna show you how to punish your opponent if he or she brings his queen out too early in the game. So let's look at an example. White plays e4, black plays e5, and now white plays queen h5. And now at this moment I have seen a lot of beginners tend to panic. They think, oh my god, he has got his queen out too early. He's gonna capture my pieces. He's gonna give a check to my king. He's planning to checkmate me. I mean, before you go into all that panic kind of thinking, just take a deep breath and think for a moment. How is this queen ever gonna checkmate you without the support of her army? Look at this army. They're still sitting in their home. It's just one queen that has come out and you tend to panic. And in that panic mode, I have seen players make bad moves. Like in this scenario, I have seen, the queen has come into my territory, let me just attack her. And they play a move like g6. G6 is such a bad move. Well, in your head, you're trying to attack the queen. It may be good to you, but in reality, it's a very bad move. Because now, you are letting this queen to capture your undefended e5 pawn and launch a fork attack on your king and your undefended rook. It doesn't matter how you try to block this check, because in the next move, this queen is going to capture this free rook and black is already lost in this position. So when a player plays a move like queen h5, ask yourself this important question. What is she attacking? Stay alert on all the kind of threats that she's creating. So in this scenario, if you see, the immediate threat is that she can capture this undefended e5 pawn with a check to the king. Besides this, she's eyeing this f7 pawn. So how do you make a move which develops one of your minor pieces and also protects this undefended pawn? So the best move in this case would be knight to c6. It's controlling the center squares and also protecting this undefended e5 pawn, and it's also developing one of your minor pieces. Now 90% of the times in this scenario, white would play bishop c4. And now the threat is real because both the queen and the bishop are attacking the f7 pawn and giving a checkmate threat to black. And you will be really surprised if I tell you that I have seen so many of the beginners playing a very bad move in this situation, and that is knight to f6, thinking that let me just attack this queen. How can you play a move like that? Even a blind person can see this checkmate threat. Please don't make such horrible moves in chess. You're going to lose the game because now this queen is going to capture this pawn and going to end your game. So evaluate every threat that the queen is creating and then play the best move. So what would be the best move in this scenario? Now to find the answer, ask yourself this important question. How can I make a tempo gaining move? And that would give you the right answer. So the best move in this scenario is g6. g6 blocks the checkmate attack and also counterattacks on the queen. In most cases, the queen will move to the f3 square, threatening a mate one more time on this f7 square. Now how can black develop a piece and also block this checkmate threat? So the best move would be knight f6. Now if white really wants to go aggressive in this scenario, you will see him playing a move like g4. And if you don't pay much serious attention to this move and end up playing a normal developing move like, let's say, bishop to g7, then you will be in a serious problem because now white will push his pawn to g5 and attack this knight. And if you try to save this knight by moving him off from this square and taking it to h5, then queen into f7 will result into a checkmate. Let's go back. So how do you play against this threat? So when white is trying to threaten something, then ask yourself this important question. How can I create a stronger threat than my opponent? So a stronger threat would be knight to d4, attacking the queen. Now white cannot push his pawn further, otherwise he will lose his queen. Also, another threat black has created is that not only is this queen being attacked, but black is also attacking this weak c2 pawn, the capture of which will lead into a fork attack to the king and the rook. Now, if white doesn't analyze this move properly and plays a move like queen e3, then black can play knight into c2 check, king d1, and now he will lose his queen. And if white tries to protect his c2 pawn, then notice that these two pawns are hanging. Black can capture any of these two pawns, but the better capture would be knight into e4 because it gains tempo, because now this knight is attacking the queen one more time. Let's go back few moves. If in this scenario, if white doesn't play this pawn, The another possibility is that white just decide to chase after this f7 pawn by playing a move like queen b3, attacking the weak f7 one more time. Now black can easily defend this with a move like queen e7. An interesting variation to see would be a move like knight d4. So the idea is white is threatening to capture this pawn and black has created a counter threat of capturing this queen. And there are some tactics lying here in this situation. Let's have a look. So since you have let your opponent capture this f7 pawn, white will capture this pawn with a check. The king moves. But now white is in serious trouble because not only his queen is under attack, but his bishop is also under attack. If white moves his queen with a check, then the king can easily capture this free bishop. And if white tries to save this bishop by playing a move like queen c4 because she doesn't want to leave this diagonal, then now black can attack the queen one more time with b5, forcing the queen to leave this diagonal. White will have to retreat this queen to d3 and now the king can capture this free bishop. Let's go back few moves. What if in this scenario white decides to play a move like knight e2? The idea is he's developing his minor piece but he's trying to control this d4 square so that it would not be very easy for the black knight to jump on this square without being captured. So now in this scenario, black can continue focusing on his development. He can play bishop g7, white will play d3 and then you castle because your king's safety is of the utmost importance. And now white can play bishop g5, pinning this knight to the queen. And now since your king is well guarded and white doesn't have any serious threat, so you can easily kick off this bishop by playing a move like h6. If bishop takes your knight, then it's a completely fine situation. You can capture this bishop back with either with your queen and then the queens would be off the board and this is a complete good position for black. If you don't want to capture back with your queen, it's okay to capture with your bishop as well because even this position is very solid and good for black. So white should ideally just trade minor pieces here, but in most of the cases, players play an inferior move like bishop h4. They just retreat it back and they try to maintain this pin on this diagonal. But now black can play a tempo gaining move g5, attacking the bishop one more time, and now bishop has to retreat back and look at how badly this bishop is trapped. It has no squares to go and is just kind of locked up in a jail. He has nothing to do over here. Though this bishop is still sitting on the board, but you can consider that white is playing now with one piece less because this bishop is useless. It can participate in any kind of attack without being captured or without sacrificing itself in the future play. This is a very good position for black, and now since this bishop is locked up and black's king is completely safe with his pieces and pawns protecting around him, and since white's king is still lying in the center of the board, black can strike in the center with a move like d5. Now on the surface it may seem that black is sacrificing a pawn because if white takes, black cannot capture back with the knight, otherwise black will lose a piece because then white can easily capture back with the bishop and black would be down a piece. So after these calculations, white would happily take this pawn on d5, and now black will not capture back because he doesn't want to lose a piece obviously, but he can play a very nice in-between move, and that is bishop to g4, attacking the white queen one more time and simultaneously developing his minor piece. The only square left for the queen is the e3 square, and now if black wants, he can capture this pawn over here. But if he does that, I mean, in most of the cases the white bishop will capture back and then there will be a trade of minor pieces here. So when you have a very good position, when you are ahead in the development, your king is completely safely castled and your opponent's king is still sitting in the center of the board, you don't want to trade your pieces with the opponent. So a better move in this situation would be knight d4, centralizing the knight and double attacking this knight over here. The first attack was obviously by this bishop. Now since this knight is double attack, white will have to capture back, and now the pawn captures and now the queen captures the pawn. Now I'm sure you must be thinking that I just told you that you shouldn't exchange pieces when you have the initiative in the game, when you have a better position, when your pieces are more developed. Then why did I keep my knight on d5 to get traded with the opponent's knight? Well, the idea was to open up this file for the rook and the queen so that they can launch an attack on the opponent king. And now since the file is open, black can give a check with his rook. Now if the king goes to the d2 square, then white will lose his queen by knight e4 check because it's a discovered attack on the queen. So now the king will be forced to move on the f1 square, and we are going to attack this king one more time with bishop e2 check. King will go on the g1 square, and now we'll play a brilliant move, and that is knight to d7. Why is this brilliant, you may ask? Well, this move just created a discovered attack on the white's queen, and if you closely observe, white's queen does not have any safe square to retreat. All of these squares are covered by the black pieces. So now white will be forced to trade his queen with our bishop, and after that it's an easy win for the black. Let's go few moves back and look at one more variation. So what if in this scenario, instead of getting this knight to this square to protect this d5 square, white plays c3, stopping knight d5 with his pawn. Well, then in this scenario, black can continue focusing on developing his pieces. He can play bishop g7, white will play d3, and now black castles, and white would play bishop g5, and since our king is safe, we're going to attack this bishop with h6, and if the bishop retrieves, be happy and play the bold move g5, attacking the bishop one more time. Bishop goes to g3. Now as we can see, the bishop is already locked up over here. This bishop can't do much, and now we play d5 to start an attack on the center. Idea is to open up this file because the king is still sitting in the middle of the board. White thinks that this is a free pawn, so most of the times he will take it. Let's say he plays e into d5, and now we play the in-between move bishop g4, attacking the queen. Queen goes to the e3 square, and now since we cannot get our knight on this square, here we can play another tempo winning move, which is knight into d5, attacking the queen one more time, and as expected this bishop will trade with our knight. We take back with our queen, and now this queen attacking this weak g2 pawn. So black will try to save this by playing f3, blocking the attack of the queen and also counter attacking this bishop. Bishop can now come to the f5 square, and now black is creating a double attack on this weak d pawn. Or one more interesting move to play would be f5. So you're telling the opponent, if you want to capture my bishop, you take it, but then how are you going to take care of this f6 move, which is going to fork your bishop and queen together? So what you're telling your opponent is, fine, if you want to take my bishop, take it. I'm also going to counter attack and put your pieces into fork. And notice after this capture, this file would also get open for the f rook to get active. White thinks that, since I'm constantly under attack and I'm constantly defending and running around the board, let me just trade a few pieces and maybe that would ease his position. So he plays f into g4, and now black can push this pawn and put these pieces into fork. But another interesting move to play in this position is queen into g2, threatening to capture this free rook over here. White's only defense is to play queen f3, and now this queen can slide to the other side of the board and capture this weak b2 pawn. And now this queen is threatening to capture this trapped rook on the a1 square. This is a very bad position for white, and black is already winning. If you are enjoying this video, then do give a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. By the way, do check out the membership program that I have for you. I'm sure it will take your skills to the next level. Now let's go back at the starting position and look at some more variations. So we saw how g6 was a very good option as it blocked the checkmate threat and also attacked the opponent's queen. But most of the players try to play very defensive and passive moves in such situation, like knight to h6. But now in this situation, white has a very good move, and that is d3. So now white has opened up the diagonal for his dark squared bishop, and now this bishop is aiming at this knight. But black thinks that there won't be any serious threat in the position because white is just trying to develop. So he plays a very normal looking move like bishop to e7. And now comes the deadly move bishop into h6. So what did white just do? He removed the defender of the f7 pawn, and white is once again threatening checkmate here. Now if black recaptures the bishop, then the game would be over for black. Let's go back again. Now we have seen the most common variations when white tries to attack the f7 pawn with his queen, as well as getting this bishop out But what if in this situation, white doesn't get his bishop out, but rather tries to play a very developing move like knight to c3? Then what should you play? Well, in that case, black has a very good move. Black can develop a piece as well as attack this enemy queen. And what would that move be? It's very simple. Knight f6. Developing a kingside minor piece, controlling the centers and also attacking the white queen and thereby gaining a tempo in the process. Now white has to move his queen. Now let's say he gets his queen to h3 and now black can play another tempo gaining move and that is d5. d5 strikes in the center and now two of black pieces are attacking this pawn and it is defended by only one white piece. So the pawn is in danger and most important, with d5 now black is able to activate his light square bishop and now is attacking white's queen again. So gaining a tempo in the process because white again has to move his queen to some other place. White plays queen f3, moving the queen out of the bishop's attack and adding protection to this pawn. And now black can develop his light square bishop by a tempo gaining move and that is bishop to g4, attacking the queen one more time. White plays queen e3 and now black can play the killer move d4, forking the queen and the knight and white is in the losing position now. Now let us go back to the starting position and look at some more interesting variations for black. White starts with e4, black plays e5 and then queen to h5 and now let's say in the game you end up playing knight to f6, attacking this queen and totally forget about this undefended pawn on e5. So then what happens? Queen will obviously take this pawn and give a check. So if you end up playing like this, don't panic. It's okay, you have just lost one pawn. But from here on, you can focus on developing your pieces and then once when you'll be ahead in development, you can start punishing the queen by creating a counter attack on her. So let's first just protect our king. We'll develop our bishop and also block this check. Now let's say white plays d3. He's trying to open up the diagonal for his bishop and now black can play knight c6 because now black is developing his another minor piece but with a tempo because now this piece is attacking white's queen. White's queen go back to g3 and now you can strike in the center with a move like d5 so that you open up this file where the white king is still sitting and all his pieces are still undeveloped. So you're just preparing for that. And here white will see that you have just left this pawn undefended and most of the players would be very happy to capture this pawn. And as a black player, you should not panic. You should be happy if the white player captures this pawn because this pawn is not for free. Because if white decides to capture this pawn, although you have lost one more pawn, but now you are going to activate your rook on an open file with the move rook to g8 and this is a tempo gaining move. Not only your rook is getting activated but you are also attacking the queen one more time. Queen will have to go on h6 and now you can open up the center with d into e4, d into e4 and if you wish you can now capture this pawn and open up this e file completely, or an alternate option is to maintain the tension there and rather utilize this open file on which the black queen is standing. So a far better move would be knight to d4, creating another threat and the threat is the weak pawn over here on the c2 square, capturing of which will put white's king and his rook into a fork attack. White obviously can't let that happen, so he may try protecting this pawn with an inferior move like knight to a3 and this defense doesn't work because now black's bishop can capture this knight over here and if white captures back, then white can capture this pawn with his knight and fork the king and the rook. And this position is already lost for white. Let's go back few moves. So protecting with the knight is not a very good option. So white will obviously try to protect this c2 pawn with his bishop, developing his bishop to a good square and also protecting this weak pawn. But this move now has led to the fall of a pawn in white's position and that is by rook into g2. White's king side is damaged, white has lost another pawn and look at all these black pieces. This rook, these two knights, this bishop over here, all of these pieces are so active. This queen, this is so active. Look at this light square bishop, though it is not developed but it's controlling an active diagonal. all of black pieces are ahead in the development and are ready to launch a full-fledged attack and punish white for not getting his king to the safety, for bringing out the queen too early in the game, and for not focusing on developing his pieces. Because black has the initiative now, black is ahead in everything, he can easily win this game because black can now get this bishop out here or maybe to here. This queen can come over here, then black's king can castle on the queen side, and all of black's pieces would be so powerful and actively attacking on the white's queen, which is still sitting in the center. And look at white's pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all are still sitting on the back rank and doing nothing. They haven't been even developed yet. How is gonna white survive the attack of the black? And now let me show you an example in the Scandinavian defense where the queen comes out too early. White starts with e4, black strikes the center with d5, e into d5, and now queen into d5. So the queen has come out too early in the game to capture the pawn. So what do you play as white? Can you think of a tempo gaining move which will develop your pieces as well as attack the queen? So the move is knight c3. And now the best move for black in this situation would be either to go back to its original square or maybe come to this square. But instead what black tries to do is give a check to the white king. So think of a move which will block the check and will also develop your piece. Well, you can block the check with the queen, but that might lead to exchange of queens and you don't want to trade pieces right in the opening. Because in the opening you want to focus in developing your pieces. So a better move would be bishop to e2. This bishop now blocks the check of the queen, also develops this bishop from his original square, and now the queen and this bishop is forming a battery on this diagonal. Now black plays knight f6, trying to develop his minor piece. And now as a white player, can you think of one more tempo gaining move which will develop one of your minor pieces as well as attack the queen? Well, it's simple. Knight f3, developing one more kingside minor piece, preparing to castle, controlling the center squares, and most importantly attacking the queen one more time. Black has to move his queen, black comes to d6 square. And now the best move in this situation would be castling. White has developed 3 of his pieces, has already castled the king, this rook is about to get active, white is about to strike the center and white is totally ahead in development. Look at black pieces. Black has developed just 2 pieces and is 3 moves behind for castling his king. Now, black has understood that white is playing a lot of tempo gaining moves and forcing black to make unnecessary repeated queen moves. And now black can see that white can very well get his knight on this square to attack the queen one more time. So to prevent that, black plays a6. Also a6 stops his bishop to come on this square and check the opponent king. So a6 prevents both knight and the bishop to jump on the b5 square. White says okay. Now white takes control of the center with d4. Also stopping black to take control of the center by playing e5. So black plays e6. The idea is now he is desperately looking to get his bishop out and then castle his king and then develop the rest of his pieces. And now white plays knight to e5. What white is trying to do is slowly trying to get all his pieces around this king. And knight e5 also controls a lot of key squares in the opponent's territory, especially this weak f7 pawn. Black doesn't like this strongly placed knight in the center and he thinks that this knight could be a danger in the upcoming moves. So black desperately wants to get rid of this knight and that is why he plays knight to c6, attacking this knight over here and also double attacking this pawn. This pawn is being attacked by the knight and by the queen as well. Now since white is ahead in development and want to soon start an attack, he doesn't care of this pawn and that is why he doesn't play a passive move like bishop to e3 to protect this pawn. Instead, what he plays is bishop f4, developing his bishop to a very active diagonal and threatening some discovery attacks to this queen. Black is very eager to capture this free pawn, so that is why he takes with his knight. And now white plays bishop h5, placing his piece to a square where it can attack this f7 pawn one more time. So 2 of white pieces are now attacking this f7 pawn. Black has to defend and the only good defensive option is knight into h5, killing the attacker. And white now recaptures back with his queen, posing a threat on this pawn one more time. Black defends with g6, queen comes back to its original position because notice if queen goes elsewhere then this pawn of white would be hanging. So the queen comes back to its starting square. Black moves his knight, threatens to capture this knight over here so that it can double up white's pawns. While white can capture this knight over here, but a better move would be to play something which poses threat on the opponent, and that would be knight to e4, threatening to capture the queen in the next move. Since the queen doesn't want to go any elsewhere on the board, so she decides to trade queens with our queen. And this is a very good move for white, because now white can capture back the queen with the rook on his corner, and now white's rook is actively placed on this open diagonal. Look at all of white's pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All of them are so active. Like at least these 4 pieces are so well developed. And look at this rook. This rook is ready to jump into action anytime. And look at black pieces. Just 1 piece is developed. The rest of them are still sitting in the home doing nothing. So white is clearly ahead in the development, and that is why he starts to launch a small attack. Black is now keenly looking to develop his bishop and get his king to safety as fast as he can. So black plays bishop to g7, and now white creates another threat in black's position by playing bishop to g5. Do you see the threat? The threat is rook d8 checkmate. Black obviously can't take this free piece over here, otherwise he will have to lose the game. And because rook d8 checkmate has to be dealt immediately, black castles his king. White gets his other knight deep into the enemy's territory by playing knight f6 check. Black doesn't like the idea of keeping all of these white's pieces in black's territory, because that could prove to be dangerous in the long run, so he decides to trade pieces. So he plays bishop into f6, and white is already doing good because black just traded one of his bishops for a knight, and the position is open where the bishops are more favorable. And white is happy to get rid of his knight because the position is open. And now second advantage that white has got in this position is that black's dark square bishop is out of the board and the dark squares are weak and no black pieces can control that. Black plays knight d6, is just trying to close this diagonal which white might exploit in the future. So he's just kind of closing the doors for the white. And now white plays bishop e7, attacking the rook as well as this knight. While you may think, why are we attacking this knight over here? Because now white can get a free pawn in this situation. Because black will move his rook, and now these trade off pieces will give white a free pawn as well as let his rook enter into the opponent's territory. Look at how locked up all these pieces are. This rook cannot come on this file because it will get captured. Black cannot develop his bishop over here again because it will get captured. There is no place for this rook to get developed. So white has to first make space for his bishop, and that is why white plays b5, so that he can fianchetto his bishop, connect both the rooks, and then probably start a counter attack on white. And now white doubles up his rook on the d file, creating a strong battery. The black king feels little threatened on this file. Black plays king g7, moving out of this rank as well as trying to control one of these holes. And now white plays rook d8. The idea is if the rooks get traded, then white would be pinning this bishop to this rook, and both of these pieces would be stuck here forever, would not get developed, and white can take good advantage of that by getting his knight to this square and then to this, and then double attacking this bishop on c8. That is why black doesn't trade rooks, it plays rook to e7. And now white plays rook d6. First, this rook was defending this bishop, and now he is also tied up to the defense of this pawn. Black plays e4, actively trying to create a passed pawn on this side of the board. White plays f3, black plays a5, rook c6, double attacking the bishop now. Bishop to b7, rook takes, bishop takes, and now rook forks the bishop and this pawn. Bishop to d5, this pawn cannot be saved. And there goes the pawn. Black attacks the c2 pawn. White plays b3, rook into c2, knight d3, attacking this weak pawn which cannot be saved. King f6, pawn is gone, rook d2. And I'm going to stop this game over here, because if you look at this position, white has successfully created 2 passed pawns, which would be very hard to stop for the black player without sacrificing one of his pieces. And this game now is completely winning for white with the correct moves. So to summarize, how do you punish the early queen moves? Focus on getting a solid position and a lead in development. Always look for tempo gaining moves. And most importantly, when you try to block a check, choose a move which will also develop your piece. And most importantly, don't be afraid to give up a pawn or two if you are ahead in the development and are gaining a tempo. It is black's turn to move now. What would be the best move for black? I'll give you a small hint. It's a tempo gaining move. Let me know your answers in the comments box and I'll see you in the next video.